Conclusive, no, but I think indications are there's something fundamentally wrong with maybe the computer systems or maybe the design, but conclusive evidence is not there. However, as you've just indicated, yesterday President Trump made the big decision, despite the FAA's resistance, to ground all 737-800 MAXs. I think that's a very significant statement by itself, because the rest of the world had already, here, where I'm here in the UK today, for example, the UK banned 737s a couple of days ago. Usually it's the FAA who takes the lead on these kinds of things. So for a lot of people, especially for people like us who have spent a lot of time advising airlines, in particular in Africa, it was a bit of a surprise for the FAA to have been the last. In fact, the president had to make the decision that dragged FAA into accepting his decision. So it is a significant statement. It's also a statement of the fact that maybe, as the rest of the world has already suspected from the minute that plane crashed, that there's something wrong with the aircraft itself, as opposed to, for example, as some were insinuating that maybe there was a safety issue with Ethiopian Airlines. That was definitely never the case. In fact, those who know the airline industry very well, from the minute they heard about it, people like Richard Quest, who knows this industry very well, said, no, there's something. Ethiopian Airlines is an extremely safe airline. It's one of the best in Africa, in the world, and there's definitely something wrong with the design. And him and others have now been proven right, especially with the decision, which wasn't an easy one for President Trump to make, but I think he made the right decision, because the safety of the passengers is more important than flying aircraft, because Boeing was insisting it's safe and FAA was going along with this kind of, I think, charade, in my view.
Right. I mean, over the past few days since the accident, we've sort of seen it play out in the media, right? Some people saying that it's Ethiopian that's not safe, and then, of course, others coming to their defense saying that it's a safe airline. Now that it's kind of, the days are passing by and we've been seeing the different perspectives, what impact is it having now on Ethiopian Airlines and actually on African aviation?
Question, because Ethiopian Airlines is one of the safest airlines in the world, and if I'm not mistaken, in the 7-year history of the airline, I think they've only had 3 accidents. It's the biggest airline in the world. It has the largest MRO maintenance shop in Africa and one of the biggest in the world. They maintain the latest Boeing aircraft, the 787 Dreamliners, the 777s, and now the Airbus A350. So it is a very competent, very safe airline. And I think that's probably also a testament the way the world shifted very quickly to suspecting there's something fundamentally wrong with the 737-800 the MAX aircraft.
Right.
I think is a testament. Had it been any other airline, especially in an emerging market like Ethiopia or in Africa, people would have suspected maybe these people are not experienced, maybe. But because it was Ethiopian Airlines, I think immediately the thoughtful people, those who know, and this is probably a plus for the African aviation, because a lot of improvements have made in African aviation safety over the years, and we haven't had that many accidents. In fact, the last couple of years, we haven't had any major accident in Africa. And Ethiopian Airlines leads that. As I said, they've been pioneers in flying these brand new aircraft. I mean, a lot of people were actually surprised, who don't follow the aviation industry, especially in Africa, very carefully, that Boeing's latest aircraft, the 737-800 MAX, was actually flown by an African carrier. What they don't realize is Ethiopian Airlines was the launch customer of the 787 Dreamliner. It was the first airline in the world after ANA to fly that aircraft when the 767s came out years ago. So it's actually a testament to African aviation in general, and Ethiopian Airlines in particular, how safe, how reliable. And if you saw on social media how Africans have banded together, especially when they saw a few misleading headlines by so-called experts from offshore who know nothing about these, indicating certain things. I think Africans, Nigerians, Kenyans, South Africans, they all banded together and said, you know what, we know this airline, it flies well, it has an excellent safety record. And I think, as I said, President Trump really was the final testament to that.
Sure.
That he said, you know what, there's nothing wrong with Ethiopian Airlines. Boeing, it's you who have to fix this. And I think we as Africans and us as professionals should be very proud of what the achievement of Ethiopian Airlines in general is, and African aviation in the last few years have achieved.
Absolutely. What do you think that other airlines around the region can sort of learn from something like this? Is there a lesson in this? Because, of course, it wasn't necessarily Ethiopian's fault, or that's what we're thinking now. But what can other regional airlines and African airlines learn from this?
First and foremost, I mean, obviously, we still have to remember that 157 people lost their lives, okay? That needs to be emphasized when we discuss this accident.
Absolutely.
But as you, the answer to your question is, what can Africa? First and foremost, I think Africans should highlight. This is actually put a positive spotlight on African aviation. An accident in an African country led by its biggest carrier has galvanized the world to respond to what is essentially a defective aircraft or a design somewhere in the aircraft. So we can now use this as an opportunity to tell the world that African aviation is improving. Yes, many of our airlines in Africa are financially challenged, but they probably hopefully can recover. But at least we can highlight the fact that we have become safer over the years, because African safety in years ago was not that great, but the last several years. So this is also because the world's media attention right now is not just on Ethiopian Airlines, but on African aviation. And this, as I said, will be an opportunity for us as Africans to tell the story that we've improved. We fly some of the best, latest aircraft. Listen, the average age of Ethiopian Airlines aircraft is 5 years.
Right.
American carriers' average age of their aircraft is 13 to 15 years. So that by itself, again, is an indication how far along we've come in Africa in general and Ethiopian Airlines in particular. They moved 11 million people last year safely.
Right.
And they're now, of course, the biggest airline in Africa. So I think these are the kinds of opportunities. I know it's a sad event. We should really emphasize the fact that 157 people lost their lives, and then another 180 lost their lives in a 737 crash in Lion Air in Indonesia. Similar circumstances. So that needs to be highlighted as well. But it was never the fault of the airlines, but the manufacturer, for whatever reason, made an error in the design and implementation of the softwares, and this is the result. But also use it as an opportunity to send a message. We're safe, we're reliable in Africa. We made significant improvements in infrastructure and in pilot training, technician training. And the result is the world actually tagged along and backed us Africans in Ethiopian Airlines in particular in this very unfortunate, sad event. And grounded aircraft. It's not an easy thing to do, by the way, when you ground one of the best-selling aircraft in the world around the world.
That's definitely an
indication. It has a huge impact financially on passengers' lives.